So here are the notes for section 1.1, the graphing calculator portion. We're going to find maximum and minimums using our graphing calculator. Now, after this activity or these notes, you'll be able to use the graphing calculator to find max and min values for word problems. But make sure when you use this that you need to show some work. And I'll kind of let you know what that work is going to entail. So let's go ahead and do our first problem. So here it says we're going to find the maximum value of a function. So we're going to find the maximum value of y equals negative 2x squared minus 10x minus 5. And then the value of x where it occurs. So when they ask us to find the max value, that means we need to figure out the y value of our vertex. So remember that maximum represents our vertex. Okay. Okay, so this is what you have to do to kind of show work. So I'm going to do this on our next page. So we're going to use our graphing calculator, and what we're going to do is plug in that equation. So your first step is to say, okay, our y1 is going to be negative 2x squared minus 10x minus 5. So this is the first thing you need to show if you're doing work using the graphing calculator. Now we're actually going to plug this equation into our graphing calculator. So go ahead and get those out, turn them on so we can start working on this. Okay. So here's my graphing calculator. Now at any time if I'm going too fast, make sure you pause the video so you can kind of get caught up, or need to kind of just rewind if you need to go back if you didn't understand something. So the first thing we're going to do so we can plug this into our calculator is press the y equals button. This is how we graph our functions. Now we put in our function, so make sure you use the negative button. So we have negative 2, your x here, and then the squared. Now our next thing is we're going to have minus 10x. So we do the subtraction symbol, minus 10, and then the x symbol. And then we do minus 5. Okay. Now, once we have done that, we're going to press the graph key. So you got to go back all the way up here to press the graph key. And here we can see that this is graphed. Now, if you want to make sure that your window is working properly, you can always go to Zoom and then go to number 6. That's Zoom Standard. That actually allows you to have your minimum and maximum for the x values at negative 10 and positive 10, and then the same thing for the y values. So now what we need to do is figure out, well, what is this vertex here? So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to use the graphing calculator to figure that out. So what we need to do is we're going to press second and then the trace button. When you do that, you kind of see this whole list. Okay, what we're looking for is number 4, the maximum. So we're going to scroll all the way down to 4, and we're going to press enter. Now, in order to find the maximum here, and if you see up here, here's our equation we plugged in, right? Down here, it kind of looks a little bit different. Here it says left bound question mark. What they mean by that is, we want to put this cursor here that's blinking on the left-hand side of our vertex. So right now it's on the right-hand side. Because of that, I'm going to move it over, and it just needs to be somewhere on the left-hand side of our vertex. Just anywhere, it does not matter. Now that I got my cursor, the one that's blinking, on the left-hand side of our vertex, I'm going to press enter. Now it asks for right bound question mark. What that means is I now need to get this cursor to the right hand side of our vertex. So once again, I'm going to use the right arrow. So when you're in this form, you can only use left and right arrows. So I'm going to use the right arrow to go over to the right hand side. Now remember, you can put it anywhere, just make sure it's on the right, and press enter. Now the last time when it says guess, that's just wanting you to figure out or wanting you to press enter so it can figure out what is the vertex. So once again, press enter one more time. And then here we can see what our x value and our y value is for the vertex. Now here we're going to round to the 10th place. So our x value is at -2 point, and we're going to round up to 5. And our y value is equal to 7.5. Now, to show more work, we're going to draw just a sketch of this graph here. It doesn't need to be perfect, just draw a sketch of it. So I'm going to go ahead, draw here. I have 1, 2, 3. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe an 8th here. Okay. And you don't really need to do the rest. I'm doing this because I'm going to graph the vertex. So remember our vertex, and I'll put it right here, was, and if we go back to our calculator, it was -2.5 and then 7.5. And then from there, what we can do is graph the vertex. So I kind of go over -2.5, somewhere around here. Now notice when we had our graph on our graphing calculator, so I'm going to go back to it really quick, that it was facing downwards. Now this should be correct because know that our A value is negative, so it's opening down. So make sure for your sketch that you follow what the graph is. And this doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, it's just a sketch. So now we do have to answer the question, because it did ask us, find the maximum value and the value of x where it occurs. So our max value is basically the y of our vertex. So we look, that should be 7.5. And that occurs at our x value of -2.5. Okay, I'm going to make sure I put y equals to know that 7.5 was our y value. There we go. So our max value of 7.5 occurs at the x value of -2.5. So whenever you're using your graphing calculator to show work to find the vertex or your maximum or your minimum, which we're going to do next, you need to show your y1, a sketch, and then basically your max value. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. So tell whether the function has a maximum or a minimum value, then find that value in the value of x where it occurs. So our equation or our function is y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. Now we have to actually decide this time if we're going to have a max or min value. To know that, we're going to look at our a value. Notice that our a value is a positive. Because it's a positive, our graph is going to open up. So that means that we are trying to find a minimum value since our graph is going to open up. All right. So we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We first have to do our y1, set it equal to our function here. So it's x squared minus 6x plus 4. Okay. So now what we're going to do is plug this into our calculator. So once again, we're going to go back to the y equals button. So make sure you identify where that's at. I'm going to press it. Now we need to clear this old function. So to do that, all you got to do is press the clear button. So right here. Now we're going to plug in x squared. So go to your x button, which is right next to alpha, the squared. And then we have minus 6x and then plus 4. Once again, remember, if I am going too fast, make sure you pause or slow down the video. Now, just like last time, we're going to press the graph key so we can graph it. So as we notice, the graph does open up like we said before, and that means we have a minimum vertex, okay? So we're going to find the vertex first, and from there, we're going to sketch our graph. So remember, to find the minimum, we're going to go second, so the blue button, and then the trace button. Now, instead of going down to 4, we're going to go to number 3, where that's our minimums at. So go down to number 3, and we press enter. Now, don't forget, left bound, whenever it says that, you're finding the left-hand side of your function, or the left-hand side of the vertex. So we are already on the left-hand side. That's where our cursor is, the one that's blinking. And then once that is there, you press enter. Now to go to the right bound, we have to move our cursor to the right, so use the right arrow to do that. And we just have to be somewhere on the right-hand side. It does not matter where. And then you're going to press enter. And then whenever it asks for guess, press enter one more time. So you really have to press enter 3 times. So here we look, our x value, and once again we're going to round, is 3, and our y value is -5. So that is our vertex. So now, using that, we're going to sketch this graph here. So I have this 1, 2, 3, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's our vertex, and I know I'm going to graph this. There you go. My equation kind of got in the way. So here's our sketch, so make sure you do that. And now the last thing, because it did ask us, then find the max or min. Once again, we're finding the minimum. And then the x value where it occurs. So our minimum, I'm going to write what the vertex was. So remember that was 3, -5. So our minimum, remember that, occurs with our y value. So our minimum is y equals -5, and it occurs at x equals 3. So that would be your final answer. So make sure with these that you write your y1, you sketch the graph, and you state what the min or max is, y equals whatever value, in this case was -5, and then where it occurs, so x equals the value. In this case, it was 3. Okay, so you're going to have some problems from homework using the graphing calculator to do that. Make sure you do exactly just like I did in these notes. If you have questions, make sure you come in before or after school, or you can email me if you have any questions.